Welcome to the Happy Soul Podcast. My name is Melissa, and this is Sammi. We are diving deep into conversations that connect and inspire. Stories of resilience, triumph, and transformation. Stories that take us to the heart of human connection. Please note that opinions of our guests do not necessarily reflect those of this podcast. Please listen with your kindness and an open mind. Each story shared is authentic and vulnerable. Let's embrace our differences with empathy, knowing every voice enriches us. Together, let's cultivate a community of respect and curiosity. Thank you for listening. Now sit back, relax, and prepare to be inspired.
Welcome to the Happy Soul Podcast, everybody. Today we are here with Talayna. We asked Talayna to be on the podcast for our Earth Month mini-series, which is obviously what you're listening to this during. We are super excited to chat with her. Talayna talks about what I love the way she says Earth-loving kids and creating Earth warriors. That's what her Instagram says, and I think it's really beautiful. Earth-loving kids, I think it's something that's so missing in society. We teach people to be afraid of things too much, and I think about embracing it is such an incredible thing. And there's so much that she talks about on her page that we wanted to bring here and help everyone that is on our following understand about sustainable living with kids in the modern society today, how to help kids navigate that, how to navigate that as a parent. It's a really beautiful message that she has going on her Instagram. So welcome to the podcast, Talayna. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to just dive right in because I asked you about this at the beginning, but I want to jump in with the 7 R's, as you call them, which is what I would like to chat about.
Sure.
Because I feel like, as we were talking about, we all grew up with the 3 R's. And if you're really involved in the eco-conscious, sustainable living, I think you know about more of them. But honestly, as much as you talk about them, I had some of them you kind of think about, but you don't really put a name to. And so I would like you to tell us about all 7 R's and where those 7 came from and how you teach that to your kids.
Well, the 7 R's I have are reduce, reuse, refill, repurpose, repair, rot, and recycle. There is a reason that I have recycle at the end. So first of all, the 3 R's in general are not enough. Reduce, reuse, recycle. That's not enough. We can do way more than that. Hence why I kind of created the 7. Recycle is the last one because it should always be a last resort. Only 9% of plastic in the entire world is ever actually recycled. Where's the rest of it going, right? The rest of it is going in our oceans and our landfills. So recycling needs to be a last resort. So that's why I say, I wrote on my 7 R's, don't do this one, do the other 6 R's first. And then if you have literally no other option, then try to recycle. Okay. Luckily, there is lots of more recycling options out there, which is really nice. There's lots more companies that are trying to take in those weird items, which is kind of nice. But regardless, try to do those other 6 first. And honestly, even before I came up with the 7, I was already teaching my kids these things. I was already teaching them, no, we don't need to buy that because we have this. Or so reducing, right? Reusing, it was okay, well, what, like a water bottle, right? Or they're reusable lunch kits. I bought them a backpack last year, I think the year before, and they're going to have the same one and forever. I don't care if they're in high school and they're like, Mom, this backpack isn't cool. I don't care. You're going to use it. Right? All about reusing. We were already refilling. I have a favorite store here in my city that we always take our stuff to go refill. Right? So we're already doing that. We were already repurposing. We have an old takeout container as a pencil case because why not? Right? It worked. So, and repair, luckily my husband I'm pretty sure he could start a business of just repairing random things. Because that's what he does, especially when the kids, the toys are broken. He'll just I'll fix it. And he does. Whereas most people are like, oh, it's trash now, right? They don't think about even trying to repair it. Don't get me wrong, some people probably can't, but try to, or find somebody who can, right? The rot one, again, that was already something we were already doing. We compost here at home. We have a compost bin in our backyard. And luckily our city did come out with a green bin, which is also really nice. But we've had that compost bin in the backyard for several years. So we were already putting things in the compost. So my kids kind of already had that in their minds. And then recycle, I've always told my kids, it's not the best. I mean, when it's our last option and the only option, then yes, we're going to recycle, especially cardboard and paper, because most of that is recycled. But I've already been doing all of these things with my kids for years. And I didn't really think about it until recently where I'm like, hey, the 3 R's got to go.
I love it because I think, yes, we all do those things, but when you give a title, especially for kids, it creates that second thought process of like, can I repurpose this? Can I reuse this? Can I repair this? Can I, like, what does this apply to versus the whole long thought of like, how do I do it? That's a longer step for kids versus the what is the title of this. So I think that's really empowering for kids to have those different, I mean, for adults too, but for kids to have those things that they can go about it. I know my son came home because I don't buy Ziploc bags, but if people give us stuff in Ziploc bags, I keep them and I'll use them to sometimes put things in my kids' lunches or whatever. And he came home one day, he goes, my teacher always tells me to throw these in the garbage. And I say, no, we reuse them. And I was like, good for you, good for you. And he's in kindergarten. And I was like, that's so good. But it's really interesting how often that's the immediate response is throw it out. Right? Just throw it's just garbage. Well, it's just garbage instead of how can we reuse it? And some stuff is garbage. I want to ask you about how you draw that line between what actually ends up being garbage and what is repairable. Because I know, like, for one thing, when you've got kids and they've got family and people in their lives that buy them gifts and things like that, sometimes it's hard to prevent those things that once broken can't be fixed out of the house. How do you, I mean, that's not, that can't is a different term for everybody, but how do you kind of draw that line between like, no, this can definitely be fixed and and I can't even think about how to begin to fix this one.
Honestly, I'm not gonna lie to you, it comes down to my husband because he is, I don't know how his brain works, but he's a genius when it comes to repairing. Whereas I'm like, I have no idea how to fix this. I literally will put it, like, we have a little counter here in our kitchen where we call it the fix it shelf. And my kids will put stuff there and my husband will go try to fix it. Now, there is times where he hasn't been able to fix something, like you can't get, like if you need to super glue it or something, sometimes the super glue doesn't work, right? Lots of times we'll still give it back to the kids. We're like, oh, it's broken, but is that okay? And they're like, oh, okay. Then there is the odd time that, yes, we do have to throw stuff in the garbage, which is super unfortunate, but we do our absolute best to not throw it in the garbage because nothing's ever thrown away. It has to go somewhere, right? And that somewhere is in our landfills or in our oceans. So we do our absolute best to do what we can to not throw things away, hence the 7 R's, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. It's tricky too, right? Because, especially they get these like plastic things and from wherever and they break and you're like, hey, I can super glue this. But after a while, you're like, I literally can't super glue this anymore. And it's got sharp pointy edges. So like, sorry guys,
Right? That's the unfortunate thing. Like it's the last resort. We're like, okay, I guess it's going in the trash. I mean, sometimes we try to recycle, but again, that's especially with plastic, it's not normally recycled. So you do what you can, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely.
One thing that I struggle with is like, I have a son who does not like to get rid of anything, which is good and bad. Like he's like, don't recycle that broken Amazon box. It's so special to me. And I'm like, oh goodness. But like, there's only so much room in this house. Like we also have to not have a house full. Like I'm always like, oh, I can't throw this jar. I can't recycle this jar because it's going to have a use. I just don't know what it is yet, but I don't have a warehouse to hold all the things that what if I can use this one day? So like how to draw the line between, keeping too much and having a house full of stuff that is taking up space and creating a whole lot of clutter. And how, do you know what I'm saying? Yep. Sammy, you had a more eloquent way of saying that question, I think. But
No, I'll let Talayna answer if she's got it down. She can go
Yeah,
ahead.
well, I do get it. Trust me. A big thing that has helped me is finding a station for that stuff.
oh, yeah.
So I buy ethical bean brand coffee from Costco because TerraCycle actually takes those coffee bags back to recycle them. Because coffee bags, most of them you can't recycle. So anyways, I have a spot, and now that I say this, I'm embarrassed because it's like overloaded downstairs. I really need to recycle. Anyways, there is a spot downstairs in my laundry room / storage room, basically, where I put them. Right?
Cool.
And so that's where those go. And then there's other spots. I have other spots for all those jars, right? Because it's hard to not collect every single jar. So I have a spot for jars. My kids know where like granola bar wrappers or anything that's tinfoil wrapped, like has that shiny tinfoil on the inside. TerraCycle also takes those. So we have a spot underneath the kitchen sink. There's a bag in there, and then that's where they put those wrappers. So everything kind of has its place, and that will be very helpful. I do understand the cardboard boxes, and I tell my kids, I'm sorry, we don't have the room for those. Those have to be recycled. Because the boxes are a little overwhelming. Or use those boxes for that other recycling or storage, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The cardboard boxes, man. I'm always like, I could do something with this cardboard box, but I don't have space for it. It's so tricky. Yeah. And we'll like keep, whenever there's like a empty plastic container that of some derivative that, you know, like I'm like, I can definitely reuse this for like a craft or something later on. And you're like, my craft bin is overflowing and sorry, it just has to be recycled at this point. There's nothing else I can do with this. My space is taken up.
Limited. Yeah. So you just made me remember there's a place, and I can't remember where it was. It just came across my feed once and I was like, that is genius. And now I don't know how to find it again so that I can like attach it to this. And maybe both of you have seen this, or I don't know, but there's this thing came across my feed that is this like storefront that is stuff. And it's like, it's all separated into bins, and you can go and fill a bag for $5 or whatever. And it's like cardboard, glass jars, all the stuff that we're talking about that you can repurpose instead of recycle. And you can go in and there's a bin full of buttons. There's a bin full of safety pins. There's a bin full of plastic yogurt containers. So if you're doing something and you want to start in that direction, you go to the store and you can collect all this stuff. It's at a store.
Mm-hmm.
How smart is that?
Yeah, I have seen that a couple of times on my feed as well. It's very cool. Yeah.
So cool.
I have not seen this. I feel like that's one of the things, like I was thinking about this morning, is there's a lot of junk on social media, but there's a lot of good. And one of the things that I found on social media is the knowledge I gained around more sustainable living is because it's not talked about in anything else I was looking at. Everything else you look at outside of social media, unless you know the websites to find, the articles to find, the magazine, unless you know those things, it's just reduce, reuse, recycle. And so like this, what you're saying, this came across my feed and this came across my feed. And that's kind of how we start learning more, is like opening up that door and liking things that kind of work around the sustainable living area. And that's one of the really beautiful things I found about social media, is there's so much I've learned that were things that I didn't know before on how to repurpose things or whatever it may be. So can you talk about how you would talk to someone about that? I would not necessarily kids, because I think it's different with kids, but maybe an adult who doesn't live in that world yet, who is like, oh, I want to be more sustainable, I want to be this, but they're like, okay, so I'm going to go buy the bamboo cutting board and I'm going to go buy the silicone plates or whatever it is that they're like, this is what I'm going to do because I hear it's more sustainable. How would you talk to a person about like, actually, let's talk about what's the most sustainable for you?
Well, I would honestly ask them like, well, what do you have at home that you can use first? Right? Like, do you really need that extra item? Do you really need that cool water bottle that everyone's talking about or that's on the shelf because you think it's cute? Use what you have first, figure out if you can recycle the container or whatever the case is, and then start searching for a more sustainable option. Like, it's surprising how much you may already have when you start actually thinking about it. Because lots of people don't think about it, right? That's the thing, is people just don't think about it. Right. So I think you got to work on doing that first before you go all crazy and buy all sorts of stuff that you may not necessarily need.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I just was thinking about what you're saying, like have what you already need. And I'm just going to tell this story because I think it's hilarious. But we were making a car parking garage for my son for Christmas. And my husband, who works like in cabinet making and woodworking and stuff like that, he was at work telling his coworker what we were building. He's like, oh, just go take this from there. You could get it from the shop. And he's like, no, you don't understand. She has to make these things from whatever's in the house. I can't go get things. It has to be from whatever is already in the house. And so like we have like piles of like nuts. So this was like from my husband's work. It was like wood they were going to throw out. And I was like, no. We'll take that and we'll build something with it. And it made our sign. So we just had someone carve it into there. And so like things that we have this pile of like nice wood in our basement that I'm like, we can build things for our kids for this. And he's like, whenever he's trying to do it, because he gets sent with the design and he has to make it happen. And his coworker's like, oh, just take this from. He's like, no, I'm not allowed. I have to make it from what's at home. Yes, you do. Yes,
Yeah,
you do.
you totally do. Yeah. I love that.
I really want to ask this question because this is one that's been rummaging around in my brain from a post that you did forever ago. And it's about you. And this is like, this might sound like I'm questioning, but it's genuinely a curiosity question. You were talking about like a more sustainable option for kids coloring. And it was a doodle board that you were talking about versus like paper. And I'm wondering if you can talk about how you made that decision that that's more sustainable. And I'm going to share where my brain goes first so that you can dive further in. Because for me, I think, okay, yes, paper is cutting down trees. There's lots of water in that process and it's really hard on the environment. But the paper is also biodegradable and things like that. Whereas this coloring pad is probably full of chemicals inside. And if it's not reused for forever, it does end up in a landfill. So did you have you gone down the road of figuring out like the backgrounds of like the creation of both and all of that to what is the most eco-friendly? Or how did you go about making that decision and decisions like that?
Honestly, this decision just came from my kids personally because they, not so much now, but at the time, they just drew so much and they were coloring so much. And the amount of paper I was putting in the recycling was getting absolutely obnoxious. And I'm like, okay, we gotta do something else about this. And it also worked as like an Easter gift too, if that makes any sense.
Oh, cool.
So when you're looking for a better sustainable option for gifts, that worked out really well. But yeah, it honestly came down to my kids of what they were doing. Now, that's why I also say like you do have to do what works for you. So yes, I agree. Like I never did do the research because sometimes you don't want to.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't want to know what you just did. But you're right. Like the plastic thing that I had bought, these boogie boards, are probably not as good as just cutting down a tree and making a million pieces of paper, right? But in the grand scheme of things, I was doing what was best for my family at the time. And at the time, they were wasting so much paper. Because it's not even like, I am so not that type of parent that keeps every single drawing or painting. No. All of it goes to recycling. And because they were drawing so much, I'm like, okay, I don't want to throw paper away anymore. Well, not recycle it, any more paper. So that's why we got these boogie boards. So yeah, I do think it comes down to, sure, of course, do your research, but also do what's best for your family. Like if your kids don't draw that much, maybe they don't need a boogie board, right? Maybe they just need a little scribbly, like a little book that they can also take with them in the car and stuff like that, right? So do what works for you. I don't know if that's any more helpful.
No, it absolutely is. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't say no. Yes, it is absolutely helpful. I was just curious because that's one of those things, like I was talking to someone else I know, I was about to say who it is, but I won't. Someone else I know about this because they bought, and they do a lot of, I feel like that's the one thing about sustainable living that I find is interesting is when you start talking to people is everyone has a different perspective about what is the most sustainable option. And it goes into what they read about, what they learn about, what their family values are. Like there's so much that goes into it. And I find it really fascinating because, so I was talking to someone about this the other day, not boogie boards or specifically, but it was actually about food waste. And they were talking about how they use a food like a HelloFresh or something like that. I can't remember what it was. And I said, did you look into, because I know she's very concerned about the food waste. And I said, have you looked into about the plastic waste that comes out of that and how, like, because I know that's a concern, but like, if you're buying the food, like the food waste, like Flash Food or Food Hero that's coming out of a grocery store, then you're limiting that food waste because you're using what would be waste. And even if you don't eat it all, it would have been waste anyways. And and like, how did you figure that out? And she was like, actually, I read this really big article about it. And they did this background on like, not only the plastic that comes from like Food Hero, or not Food Hero, HelloFresh and Chef's Plate and stuff like that, but all the plastic that goes into packaging to get stuff into grocery stores versus what comes out of this versus the food waste and the growing of it and all of these things that balance. And she's like, it's not quite as good as the companies say, but it still ends up being better. And it's one of those things, like for her, that makes the most sense. And for me, I'm like, I can't get around it. The plastic that I have to throw out to do that is like so high. And it hurts me to see that plastic, but for her, it hurts to see the food waste. And so it's just one of those things we all have to pick and choose what works for our family and what makes the most sense in our brain based on the information that we have. So
Well, yeah,
that's what.
Sorry, like you're not going to do everything, right? Like it's hard to try and do all the things. So that you're exactly right. Like do whatever your heart feels is right, do that, right?
It kind of goes back to something you were saying as we were just before we hit record, we were just kind of saying hello. And maybe this is a good time to dive into that. This kind of feels like a good segue into it. Just that, like, as long as you're putting care into your decisions, you're not just willy-nilly going about it, not thinking about, like, I think that those two examples are really good examples to, like, but you're thinking about it, you're putting conscious effort. And if you're thinking about it, putting conscious effort into it, then that probably will spill out to the other areas too. And somewhere in there, there's something that's happening you're making some sort of eco decision. When we were asking you, like, what's on your heart to share, and you specifically said to care, can you tell us where that comes from? And is that kind of what you meant, or
And
what does that word mean to you?
Yeah, it is definitely what I meant, because honestly, it hurts my heart a lot when people just like don't give two thoughts about the earth ever. And I think a huge part of it is we live in a society that we don't have time to think about it, right? We're too busy with our own lives. Our kids are busy. We're busy with work, blah, blah, blah. And this busyness has caused us to be addicted to convenience. And that convenience is harmful to our planet. This mindset of, I'm too busy, I'm going to do whatever is easiest for me because I'm the only thing that matters, is what's harming our planet. This mindset of me is hurting us. And that was what hurts my heart, because I just want people to care. I just want them to care. Like, have that little mindset shift, like, do I really need this coffee today that's just going to end up in the trash? Plus, I'm drinking a bunch of microplastics. Do you really want those in your body? Blech. Right? And people, I've actually told people that, and they'll laugh at me. They'll be like, it's just a coffee cup. Yeah, said, 6 billion other people, right? Mm-hmm. So people don't have this mindset of thinking of the earth first. Don't get me wrong. You're still going to have times you're going to go to McDonald's or Starbucks, or you're going to throw that extra piece of plastic in the garbage, right? Like, we're not perfect. We're never going to be perfect. But we need this mindset of loving our planet. This is literally the only home we have. It's the only home we have. So why are we trashing it?
Yeah.
Right? Why are we not taking care of it? Why are we not loving it the way it needs to be loved? Right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, man, yeah. I want to rant with you instead of ask you questions, because yeah,
that just hit me right in talk about caring. When you said that, I was like, oh, that hit the cockles of my heart right there. Yeah, totally. Do you know? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sam.
I was just going to say, I was having this conversation yesterday. It was a reflection on another conversation, but talking about the caring. And it came from a conversation where people were complaining about their neighbors not having well taken care of lawns. Like, and they were like, have some pride and ownership. Take care of your lawn. Let's just talk about pride and ownership for a second. You are basing it down to your one home, your one piece of property, and your pride and ownership is having a beautifully curated lawn that is weed-free and very green. And I am thinking about the whole entire earth and pride and ownership in that. And all of those weeds, or all of that weed killer that you put on it, having that nice lawn is actually really crappy for that. And so you are not having pride and ownership in your planet. And you were only thinking about your one simple property. And I really wanted to say that, but I didn't. But it sits really heavy on my heart, because it's like, yeah, I think we just have to, and I'm not shaming people for that. That's what they know. That's what they think. And I think one of the things that we can do is, and we talked about this with Sarah as well, is helping people find the mindset shift that matches their values. And so for her, one of the things she was saying is like, instead of telling people like, oh, this is better for the planet to reuse your containers, I say, look how pretty your cupboard can be if you reuse your containers, right? If you refill things. And I was thinking like another one is like you're talking about the convenience of we're so addicted to convenience. And you think about driving to the grocery store instead of walking, or the one that was in my head the other day is like, we have all like KitchenAid mixers, for example. If you go look up how to make any type of bread recipe, it tells you to use a KitchenAid mixer or some form of mixer to knead your dough. Mm. And it's like, actually, if you use your hands, like you're getting a workout in and it's better for the environment. And like, there's not using electricity and you're making your own thing instead of going to a store. Like there's so much more to it. If you walk to that grocery store, you can skip the gym today. So it's better for the environment and better for your body. You know, like there's so much more to it. So you can find a way. So whether you believe in climate change or you believe that your actions make a difference for the planet or not, most of the choices you can make that end up being better for the environment can actually be better for you as a human being, in terms of whether it's your spending money, your mobility, your physical activity, the way that you eat, or like better products in your home. Like it can all be together if you find the right mindset that adds to the value that you want to have. Mm-hmm. Sorry, that was kind of a rant.
Fire today.
There was no question there. It was just a fired up
She's
thing.
on fire today. I mean, do you have your pivot mug? Because I'm gonna say something that came across my feed.
Pivot mug. Is my friend's pivot mug?
Not yet. I have one thing that I'm going to say that came across my feed, and then I have a question because I want to talk about kids. But so I just, when you guys were talking about when it came up about treating the planet and stuff, I remember this other thing that came up in my feed, and it was about Mars, and it was just this little joke, and it was like, can you imagine if like really Mars is as unlivable and hot as it is because we used to live there and we screwed it up. And so we screwed up the environment so badly that we had to move to Earth, and now we're doing it all over again. What a hilarious thought. Isn't that funny?
It's funny and sad, really.
Right? Totally. Like, unreal. Anyways, okay. Can we do a quick pivot, and can we talk about, because something that you have talked about that I think is so awesome, because like it can be pretty overwhelming when we start talking about all the things. It is overwhelming. I know I get overwhelmed by it, but something that I love that you talk about is teaching your kids to love the planet. Can you talk about that a little bit with us, and like, where did that come from for you, and how do you teach your kids to love the planet?
Well, I think it came from, I grew up on a farm, and so I was always outside. It was the 90s. My parents never knew where I was because I was just outside. So I don't know. So I think it started from there. I was just always outside, just always loved the planet. We always spent a lot of time in nature. And then the second I had my kids, like I just enjoyed being outside anyway. So the second I had my daughter, we walked outside. And so both my kids they learned how to walk inside, obviously, but like they almost learned how to walk outside at the same time because I was just always holding their hand because we're just always outside. And there's no real, how do you say this? Like, way to teach them to love the earth, in my opinion. Honestly, all I've done is taken them outside. Now, in saying that, I have asked them questions over time, like, hey, I will point things out, like, look at this cute little bug, like the ladybug. And sometimes they'll see a spider and they'll freak out. I'm like, hey, spiders eat the mosquitoes. I mean, he's gross looking, but he's good, right? And I love nature, so that helps. So like when we go for a walk and I see a bald eagle, I lose my mind because I love bald eagles.
Totally.
And so my kids are like, oh yeah. And then we'll just stand there and look at it. And then I'll be like, what do you think he's flying for? And like, where do you think his friend is? And stuff like that, right? So asking questions is also super helpful. And getting them to be mindful of what is around them, not just like, hey, let's get to our destination. Let's go to the playground. Let's go do this. No, be mindful. Like, hey, like our walks, especially when they were younger, now they're really fast. So when they do want to go somewhere, they're running. But when they were younger, like our walks would take forever. And I loved it because they were just off doing stuff, and they still take a long time. We just go further distances now. But they just always want to look at things and explore and find something cool and ask questions. And honestly, that's all it takes. Take them outside, but make that conscious effort to be slow and be mindful and like, let's go look at this. Honestly, when it gets nicer outside, We like just laying on our grass in the backyard and looking at the clouds, or looking at the birds that fly by, or like our garden when it's nice and ready. We love sitting there and looking at all the bees, because you never know who's going to come by, right? Like last year we had a giant bumblebee come by, and we lost our minds and like would watch out for him for days on end, because we just loved watching him so much, because he was seriously like huge, biggest
They're
bumblebee.
so cool.
So,
They're so cool. I
oh
love
my God,
those
it was
big
so
guys.
cool. I've never been so obsessed with a bee before. But that's all it takes, is going outside. And then in doing that, they are going to love the planet that much more, right? They're going to love the insects. They're going to love the grass. They're going to love looking at all these cool trees and finding the different bark on every tree, that type of thing. And in that love, they're going to learn that, well, we can't just trash the place, right?
Yeah.
They're going to have that more of a desire to actually protect our planet and care for it.
Protect it.
Yeah.
I love that so much.
It's like my favorite thing when I go to the park with my kids and they see garbage and they're like, why would someone litter? It's so rude. And I'm like, it is, but it was probably an accident. So let's just like pick it up. If we have gloves, or if we can wash our hands soon, let's just pick it up and throw it out.
Yeah.
And it's like, but they're so like shameful about it. Like, that's rude. And you're like, okay, I did not teach you that way, but that's okay. Yeah. I think that's one of the things, even in just the letting kids embrace nature, play, like the amount of times you see someone who's getting mad at their kid for getting dirty and playing in the dirt, and you're like, they are learning so much from playing in the dirt, even if your value isn't the earth and taking care of it, even if that's not your value, your child is learning a ton about cause and effect by playing in that dirt. Like, like, there's so much. Don't buy them the sensory bin for in the house. Just let them play in the dirt. Now, obviously, we live in Canada. It's not always possible to play in the dirt. But when it is, let them play in the dirt. You know, like we were out for a walk the other day, and you know, when everything's melting and there's so much water running down the sides of the roads into the gutter. And I remember when I was a kid building, like, you'd get the rocks and sticks and try to build a dam to stop the water and redirect it. And they were doing that. And I'm like, yes, like, this is so good. And they're learning cause and effect. They're learning about dams. They're learning how the water changes direction when a dam is built. Like, that's literally a unit at the science center, and they're doing it on the side of the road. And you get people who are like, get your kids off the road. And I'm like, they're not on the road. They're on the sidewalk, touching the corner of the road that you're not driving on anyways. Woo, I'm ranty today. Sorry, Talayna.
She's
I
fired.
Welcome.
She's a woman on a mission today. I love it.
Okay. I want to ask, because I love the way you're teaching it about your kids and teaching that value of sustainability and loving the planet, taking care of the planet. If an adult was to come to you and say, like, okay, I really need to learn how to do this, where would you help them start? What would be the first place in sustainable living that you would start talking about and help them make shifts around?
Well, I would also tell them to go outside, probably.
Yes.
Go outside and be with the earth and love it, because it really is, I find that incredibly important. Another step I like, which a lot of people find cheesy, but it's great, it's like literally scientifically proven to work, is being grateful. Like, start your day off with I'm thankful for the earth today, for the trees or the bumblebees because they bring me food, or whatever the case is, right? So a small gratitude action, I think, goes a long ways. I actually talk about this quite a bit in the starter ebook that I did create. But so the gratitude, mindfulness in nature, which we talked about, right? Going outside. Dinner. I also talk about like dinner table reflections. My kids really like that one at the end of the day. Like, what did you see today about like outside that you loved? And they'll tell me about a grasshopper or something like that, right? But another thing is, honestly, that I tell people a lot, take it one step at a time. Don't try to replace everything in your bathroom and your kitchen and, all at one time, because you're going to overwhelm yourself, and then you're not going to do anything, right? Because that's what happens. We're like, oh, this is too much. I'm done. So take it one step at a time. What is something that you really want to replace, or something that you desperately need to replace, right? Like if you're out of Ziploc bags, okay, go buy some reusable cotton ones or something like that, right? If you keep bringing or taking those plastic water bottles from the work fridge, well, then invest in a reusable water bottle. Do you know what I mean? So think about what you really could replace first, and then do it one step at a time, because like I said, you do it all and you're going to overwhelm yourself or spend too much money or something like that, right? So that's why I always say go outside and do it one step at a time.
One step at a time. Yeah.
I love that.
I feel like that's the simplest thing, is if you just do one little thing, right, it's going to spark the next thing. Because like you said, it's overwhelming if you try to do everything at once, which is applicable to everything. It's overwhelming if you just jump into parenting 3 kids at one time. It's overwhelming if you just jump into sustainable living all as a whole. It's overwhelming if you jump into the whole health and fitness world all at one time. Anything is overwhelming if you just jump all in head first. You have to like wean your way in, find the little things that work.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Can we rewind back to something? Because I have a question. It's going to sound super naive. Because I was like, you said it a few times. And I was like, I wrote it down. I want to circle back. TerraCycle. What is this?
Oh,
where does it come from?
Goodness.
What is it? Tell me all about it.
Okay.
I have zero knowledge.
So
TerraCycle.
TerraCycle is in Canada and the US, actually. And the reason I found out about it is because my favorite store here in our city takes those foil lined wrappers, like granola bar wrappers and like chip bags, I guess I'd say the one that comes to mind, and any plastic wrapping. So plastic bags, produce bags, the plastic that's around your toilet paper, something like that. Okay. And my favorite store, they take that. And then I got interested. I was like, how are you taking this? Like, I didn't question it at the time because I was just like, here, take all the recycling. But yeah, the company is called TerraCycle, and they take some crazy things for recycling. And you can actually go on the website and search. And so I searched the other day. I'm like, well, I know I can recycle markers, and I just didn't think of where. So I've been hoarding them for like 3 years. So I was like, hey, it's time to find where I can recycle markers and use up pens and highlighters, all those things, right? And so I go on the TerraCycle website and I said, okay, markers. And it said, here, Staples, downtown, done. Went to Staples, put all my markers in the bin. Right? And then and then the other day, I cleaned out my bathroom cupboard and I have a bunch of what do you call, like, beauty containers that they don't really go in recycling. You're not really supposed to recycle them because they're just kind of weird.
Yeah.
Went on the TerraCycle website and they're like, oh, just drop them off at Walmart. I'm like, okay. Right?
What?
Genius. And they take all of these things. They do create some new products out of the things that they are recycled, but it's just a really neat program that you can go and sign up. And what's also really nice is haven't looked at it in a little bit, so I don't know if it's still there, but I'm assuming it is, that you do get credits or like dollars, I think, back. And you can take those dollars to fundraise. I don't know what you can fundraise, but I know I can take that money and put it into my kids' school. So
interesting.
Yeah, it's an amazing program. I do highly recommend you look at it, especially when you go onto the website and search. You might find those spots where you can actually take those items without having to like mail them, right? Like my coffee bags, for example, I have to find a box and go mail them, which is fine. I'm still going to do that. I'm just saying there is also those stores that will take those specific products. So yeah,
you just like markers never even crossed my mind.
Go to Staples.
And I huck them out all the time. And I didn't even...
Markers, pens, highlighters, all those things. They will take them all. And when I went to Staples, they had the marker bin. They had old cell phone bin, printer ink, like so many things. Yeah.
You know what? You know what you've inspired me to do? This is my step today. I mean, I'm saying it out loud so that I'm like, you guys are my accountability, okay?
Sounds good.
This is what I'm going to do. I'm sitting here in my undeveloped basement, even though I've made this pretty.
Yeah.
I'm going to put I have shelving already. It's just, I'm not using it right now. So I'm going to put the shelving up. I'm going to take some boxes that I already have. And I'm going to go on to this. I'm going to look that up and I'll make a bin for Staples and I'll make a bin for all of these things. And like the keep bins, like I was already thinking that when you were saying put a place, I'm like, yeah, of course. Like instead of just like taking up, I'm just going to put a shelving unit right over there and it's going to have all that stuff on it.
Genius.
And I'll have a Staples bin and whatever else.
Yeah. Love it.
I'm really excited to do this. You've just made me a project. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's interesting you're talking about TerraCycle because I remember hearing about TerraCycle a long time ago. It was one of the first like things I heard of alternative recycling. Cool. But I've never used it because I remember when I looked at it, I don't remember seeing any of that on the website. It was only what you could ship to them. And
Mm.
I was like, I don't, and it was like, I had to still pay for all the shipping. And I was like, I didn't have the extra finances to do that. And I completely forgot about it because it was so long ago. And I was like, I can't do this. But I don't think they had that on the website at the time of like, you can go do those things here. Like, I know that you can recycle the markers at Staples and stuff, but I had never seen that on the website before. It's been so long since I looked at their website. So thank you for that reminder because
Yeah, no problem.
yeah, I knew I'd heard about them, but forgot all about them. I'm gonna pivot us again. I have two questions, and we'll get going here. But okay, one is just like a really quick, off the top of your head, what is the oldest thing that you own that you still use on a regular basis?
Ooh.
Well, there's a few things. The kitchen table we have is 30 years old.
Cool.
Yeah, well, what's the point of getting a new one? It works fine. We have couches downstairs that are probably 15, 20 years old. Still work fine. And my winter jacket, I get made fun of every single year when I wear it because it's not in style. And it's like 13 or 14 years old. And I got the zipper fixed this year. That was all that I needed to do was get the zipper fixed. And people are still like, why did you just go buy a new one? Why? Works perfectly fine. It's a winter jacket. So
I am warm.
yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
it works for Canada, so it's fine.
Okay, second question. Is there anything that when you originally started down your more sustainable living journey that you thought was definitely the most sustainable option and that you've since learned was actually not the most sustainable option?
You know, I thought about that yesterday, and I can't really think of one.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at doing the research before I go and change something. So yeah, honestly couldn't really think of one. There's been some where I've used, like for example, I've used refillable dishwasher tabs, and our dishwasher is not the best, so it just wasn't working, and so I had to go back to a different brand. This brand I use is still like biodegradable and super earth friendly. It just comes in like a plastic container, which I don't like. But sometimes you just got to do what works, right? But yeah, other than that, there's literally nothing that I can think of. I tried to think about it yesterday and I could not come up with anything.
Do you mind me asking really quick what dishwasher soap you use?
I use Norwex dishwasher detergent because it's biodegradable and it's like safe for our oceans and stuff like that. Yeah, and like I said, I don't like that it comes in a plastic container, but there's only so much you can do. And I find it's the only stuff that works for my dishwasher too. So
I had one that worked for my dishwasher and I was so excited, and I think they must have changed the composition of it because like a switch, all of a sudden it stopped. Nothing has changed in my house.
Yeah.
The water hasn't. Nothing's changed, and all of a sudden it's not working. And I was so excited about it because I'm like, of all the products that I've tried in my dishwasher, this one is supposed to be eco, and I really have loved it, and it's done the best job. And now all of a sudden it stopped working. So I'm like,
I know it's so
need a new
frustrating when that
dishwasher
happens.
soap.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so frustrating. Anyways, thank you.
I got one more. My question is, you talked about growing up on a farm, but did that growing up on a farm also teach about sustainable living and things like that? Or is that just where you learned to love the earth and everything else came afterwards? How did the switching your habits thing happen for you, or were they already habits for you growing up?
Well, you know what's funny is I didn't think about them at the time as sustainable habits. It's just like how we did things. And then I went to college and all of that went out the window because child wasn't really thinking. And then I grew up a little bit and they all started coming back. But yeah, like on the farm, we composted, we saved water all the time. We tried not to waste too much because it was a pain to try and throw it away, honestly. We repaired stuff all the time. And so I did learn a lot of that on the farm. And then I think that's where all those habits kind of came back, especially right as I had kids, because it was just like, well, I did this. Why aren't we doing this? Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's incredible.
So good.
Yeah, so good. Because I know I grew up and I remember I was jacked to be part of the recycling club in our elementary school when it came up, and every lunch hour we got to go collect all the bottles from the classrooms and get in my teacher's car and drive them to the recycling place in town. I was jacked to be part of that because we were making a difference, and that was like all I knew at that age was recycling the bottles and cans. There was nothing else. So it's interesting hearing when people grow up and these simple things. Like I know Melissa's talked about, like her mom home makes a lot of things. She's very much a fix it and make it kind of person. And I'm not shaming my parents for that, but I did not grow up with that at all. And so it had to be a learning process as I grew up trying to learn how to do those kinds of things. So it's interesting hearing where people come from. Is there anything else on your heart today, Talayna, that we haven't chatted about, that's something you'd really like to share about eco-living or creating earth-loving kids and earth warriors? Anything like that?
Honestly, just what I said before, like go outside, be with our planet. It's the only home we have. Just go outside and be with it. Take your kids out there and try to learn to change your mindset of loving our planet, because it's literally the only home we have.
Thank you so much, Talayna. That is incredible advice.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been awesome. So thank you.
Awesome.
We're so grateful. We're so excited for April, and we'll be excited to release this. So thanks so much for spending your morning with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. To help support the growth of this podcast, please feel free to leave us a review, follow us on socials, or recommend us to your friends. Your support honestly means the world to us. With love, Sammi and Melissa.